Good evening and welcome to the Eastern Regional Legislative Town Hall meeting. The theme for this evening's town hall is Mobilizing for Action, the new civil rights movement. The shattering events of 2014, beginning with Michael Brown's death in Ferguson, Missouri, did more than touch off a national debate about police behavior, criminal justice, and widening inequality in America. It ignited a millennial movement that recognizes our voices matter. This evening's programming is designed to provide you, our young leaders, with an opportunity to dialogue with subject matter experts. We hope you will gain invaluable information to aid you in your understanding of this new civil rights movement. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening, Millette Green. Millette covers breaking news daily on the News 4 Live desk on Washington's leading news station, WRC-TV. She also helps lead the WHUR news department with her vast experience spanning 20+ years of service. She covers local and major national news in the Washington, D.C. area. The veteran journalist and native Washingtonian is an Associated Press Award nominee. She received a magna cum laude Bachelor of Arts degree in broadcast journalism from Howard University. Millette lives in Prince George's County with her husband Ricky and 2 children. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Mrs. Millette Green.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for having me here this evening to share a little bit of time with you and talk about a discussion that is so very important to have and to have with people in your age group. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here this evening. I know it's been a long day, but I really want you to think about what you might want to contribute to the conversation this evening. We've got a wonderful panel, but we also want to hear what is on your mind and how we can use our expertise to help forward our discussion and eventually our activism, right? Everybody is asking questions and talking. You know, when the incident in Missouri happened with Mike Brown, when the videotape was released in New York City with the police officers and the chokehold death of Eric Garner. We have been talking about it and wondering, what do we do about this? And when you see the activism in the streets, and I've covered several demonstrations here in Washington, you know, the elected leaders, the police, law enforcement agencies, really had to take notice. The mainstream media had to take notice and take the situation seriously. Oh, it's not just a bunch of kids holding up traffic. These young people have a message, and they're calling this the new civil rights movement. So what does that mean? That's why we're here, to talk about this. And of course, we have a wonderful diverse and expert panel here from backgrounds that can share in making sure that we have not just a discussion, but a discussion that has the potential to enlighten us to be more active. So let's get to our panel and introduce you to everyone this evening. Injil Muhammad is CEO and founder of Nationwide Tax Solutions Incorporated. Headquartered on Madison Avenue in New York, his firm specializes in tax strategy and IRS problem resolution. We all need that. With over 28 years of experience, Mr. Muhammad has successfully negotiated thousands of tax cases, collectively saving tens of millions of dollars for his business and individual tax clients. He authored the ebook, Make an Offer the IRS Can't Refuse, and is a featured guest on several radio shows. Mr. Muhammad is a graduate of Syracuse University with a Bachelor of Science in Accounting. He is a proud father in the Burlington-Willingboro chapter of Jack and Jill of America. He resides in New Jersey with his wife and 2 children. This is our panel.
Good evening. It's such a pleasure to be here. I had the privilege of meeting a lot of you this morning with your bright eyes. You still have bright eyes, though. I know it's getting late. And you had so many excellent ideas this morning. Now, some people may be wondering, what does an accountant have to do with civil rights? Like, what does an accountant have to do with civil rights? One thing I want to mention is that In the 60s, as we mentioned earlier, we marched and we changed the political landscape in the country. And in the 70s, we were able to elect black mayors in major cities in the United States. In the 80s, based on affirmative action, a lot of African Americans, first timers, went to college, and decades later, we saw expansion in the middle class. And as just was mentioned, in 2008, you guys obviously remember this, we elected the first African American president, who has done a magnificent job, who inherited 2 wars and almost a bankrupt economy. Okay, so we should be very proud of his success. But what I find is that when we speak of civil rights, it sort of reminds me of a fighter who has a jab. And that jab is political. But we need, in my humble opinion, to add a right cross to that jab so we can become a complete fighter. And that is, we need to focus somewhat on economics. The American pie, if you will, the net worth in the United States of all households, and when I say net worth, I'm talking about adding up all the things you own minus with the debt you owe on that. So, for example, if you own a house and it's worth $500,000, but your debt is $400,000, your net worth is $100. So the net worth in the United States is approximately $80 trillion. That's all of us combined. In the African American community, we represent $2 trillion. Now, based on the fact that we're approximately 13% of the population, those numbers are extremely low. We should be around the 11 trillion number. So we have a wealth deficit, and this wealth deficit impacts civil rights. Because yes, we've made progress, we should be very proud, but we should not ignore the role of economics in our struggle. America is a beautiful country, but without economic power, you're a guest in America. It's like being in someone's home and you're allowed to go in certain rooms, but you have no ownership. So when things get tight, guess who's gonna leave the house? It's the guests. So we have to make sure that you young people who have the opportunity, the Reverend said something very profound this morning. He talked about that you guys are rich, and what he meant, what he's saying was you're rich in that you have the time to think and have your parents that put you in a position where you have time to strategize. You're not living in communities where people are shooting you down and you're in poor schools. So you, the grandchildren of the civil rights movement, have a responsibility to not only continue the great work that has been done by Dr. King and many others, but also continue where Dr. King was headed, and that was economic equality.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. All right. Did you want to add, Mr. Muhammad, before we go to audience
questions? Just real quick,
questions?
because I know we have to go to audience questions. I just want to echo what everyone has pretty much said. The only thing I would put on top of that would be we just need to make sure that barriers are broken down, because once people understand, the police and the community understand that we all want the same things. We want a safe neighborhood. Everyone wants to go home to their families. No one wants to get shot. So the bottom line is we have to communicate with the police to let them know that we're human. And we also have to do everything else that was said here. But just you guys at the point where you, like was mentioned, you have the power to communicate and be responsible for those who are not as fortunate as you are now in our community. So step up to the plate, get involved, and make sure that you're communicating to the police, let them know we are kids. We're kids just like your kids. You know, that's who we are. So that's it on that, because I know we need to move on.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Audrey Watt. I was going to ask a question for Mr. Muhammad. I was wondering how you recommend that we collaboratively we raise our net worth in America.
That's an excellent question. Excellent question. Well, give her a hand. Give her a hand. Unfortunately, we don't circulate dollars within our community as much as other people do. For example, in the Asian community, a dollar stays in that community for 30 days. In the Jewish community, a dollar stays in that community for approximately 21 days. In the white community, it stays in that community for approximately 17 days. Unfortunately, in our community, a dollar stays in our community for 6 hours. And I'm embarrassed to say that, and I know if Dr. Martin Luther King was alive, he would make that probably his forefront in terms of trying to change that, because that's telling us, the Congresswoman said earlier that your budget tells what your morals, what you're about. So the fact that we're not spending money with one another is an indictment against all of us. So one thing that we need to do to increase our net worth is to begin to share monies with one another. For example, if all the adults in the room looked at their bank statements for January 2015, last month, and try to figure out how much money have I spent with African American companies. And hopefully, you know, that's more than 2 cents or 2%. If it's not, we need to increase that. But we also need to develop our businesses. And the way we have to do that is making sure that they have access to capital. That's a political move and also an economic move. So everything works together. It's not one or the other. We need politics, we need business. But most important, you guys, I see you as the future. Because in this room, we may have a person here who has a company like Google, Facebook. I mean, you guys have to create these kind of companies because that's what's going to change the image that we have. That's what's going to make the police march the way you want them to march. You know, so we have to make sure that we're not in love with money. You don't worship money. You respect money. It's a tool. But we have to share within our community to increase our net worth.
Very well said. We are the largest consumers in this country.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
largest consumers. We
We
spend money.
1 trillion. It's
Yeah.
predicted that in 2015 we're going to spend $1 trillion.
African
African-Americans.
Americans in particular. Yeah.
African Americans, $1 trillion. So we have to, you guys have to change that. Don't follow in the example. If it's not a good example, adjust it. Take the good that we give you, but if we went astray, correct it, because that needs to change.